The burning truth. Who really destroyed the Library of Alexandria? What if I told you that the greatest crime ever committed against human knowledge was not an accident, not a single catastrophic fire, and not the act of a mindless mob? What if the destruction of the Library of Alexandria, the most magnificent storehouse of wisdom the ancient world ever created, was a calculated, deliberate act of erasure, ordered by men who understood exactly what they were destroying, and did it anyway? For centuries, this was hidden from the world. Tonight, we pull back the curtain. Welcome back to Historical Secrets. What you are about to hear will challenge everything you were taught in school about the fall of the ancient world's greatest treasure. To understand what was lost, you first need to understand what existed. The Library of Alexandria was not simply a building filled with scrolls. It was the intellectual heart of human civilization. Founded in the 3rd century BC under the reign of Ptolemy I of Egypt, this institution held an estimated 400,000 to 700,000 scrolls at its peak. Within those walls lived the collected works of Aristotle, the original manuscripts of Sophocles and Euripides, star maps that charted the heavens with stunning precision, medical texts that described surgical procedures not rediscovered until the modern era, and mathematical treatises that, had they survived, might have launched the scientific revolution 1,000 years early. Scholars traveled from every corner of the known world to study there. Ships entering the harbor of Alexandria were searched, and any books found on board were copied. Sometimes the originals were kept, and the copies returned to their owners. The Ptolemaic dynasty was obsessed with one singular mission: to gather every piece of written knowledge that existed on Earth into one place. Now here is where the story most people know begins to fall apart. Your history teacher probably told you that Julius Caesar accidentally burned the Library of Alexandria during his siege of the city in 48 BC. It is a clean, simple story, a tragic accident, a single villain, case closed. But what historians don't tell you is that this version of events was carefully crafted to protect a much darker and more complicated truth. Yes, Caesar's forces did start fires during the Battle of Alexandria. Ancient sources, including Plutarch and Cassius Dio, confirm that flames spread to parts of the harbor district. But most contemporary scholars now agree that what burned were warehouses near the docks that stored scrolls awaiting export, not the great library itself. The main library, housed in the Museum, the Royal Research Institution in the Bruchion Quarter, survived Caesar's war. So if Caesar didn't destroy it, who did? The truth was buried for a reason. Because the real destruction of the Library of Alexandria was not one dramatic moment. It was a slow, methodical execution carried out over centuries by multiple hands, each with their own motive, and the most devastating blow came not from a foreign conqueror, but from a Roman emperor who claimed to be a man of God. Let us follow the evidence. The first serious wound came in 272 AD, when the Roman Emperor Aurelian besieged Alexandria to reclaim it from the rebellious Palmyrene Empire. The fighting devastated the Bruchion Quarter, the very district where the Museum and its vast collection stood. Ancient sources describe the area as being reduced to ruins. Thousands of irreplaceable texts were destroyed in the crossfire of a political power struggle. But even after Aurelian, the library's daughter institution, the Serapeum, still stood. This secondary library housed tens of thousands of scrolls and continued to serve as a beacon of learning. It survived for another century, until a decree came down that sealed its fate forever. In 391 AD, the Roman Emperor Theodosius I issued a series of edicts that changed the course of history. Theodosius, a devout Christian emperor, declared war on paganism across the entire Roman Empire. He ordered the closure and destruction of pagan temples. And here is the critical detail that this changes everything we thought we knew about the Library of Alexandria. The Serapeum was a temple. It was dedicated to the Greco-Egyptian god Serapis, and it was also one of the last great repositories of ancient knowledge in the world. Theodosius gave the order. The Patriarch of Alexandria, Theophilus, carried it out with terrifying enthusiasm. Ancient sources describe what happened next with haunting clarity. A Christian mob, emboldened by imperial authority, stormed the Serapeum. They tore down the towering statue of Serapis. They dismantled the temple stone by stone, and the scrolls, the priceless, irreplaceable scrolls containing centuries of accumulated human wisdom, were either scattered, burned, or simply left to rot. The historian Eunapius, writing as a contemporary witness, described the destruction with barely concealed horror, noting that the only things the mob left behind were the floors, too heavy to carry away. But here is the detail that sends chills down the spine of every historian who studies this period. This was not ignorance. Theophilus and his followers knew exactly what the Serapeum contained. They understood that those scrolls represented the intellectual heritage of civilizations, stretching back to ancient Babylon and pharaonic Egypt. The destruction was not collateral damage. It was the point. The old knowledge was seen as a threat. Pagan philosophy, Greek science, Egyptian mysticism, all of it stood in opposition to the new religious order that Theodosius was building. To control the future, they had to erase the past. And if that were not enough, the final wound came just 2 decades later. In 415 AD, Hypatia of Alexandria, the last great scholar associated with the city's intellectual tradition, a mathematician, astronomer, and philosopher of extraordinary brilliance, was dragged from her chariot by a mob of Christian zealots loyal to Bishop Cyril of Alexandria. They stripped her, murdered her with broken tiles and sharpened shells, and burned her remains. With Hypatia died the last living symbol of what the Library of Alexandria had represented. The message was unmistakable. The age of free inquiry was over. So when someone asks, who burned the Library of Alexandria, the honest answer is everyone and no one. Caesar wounded it. Aurelian devastated it. Theodosius ordered the killing blow, and Theophilus swung the axe. It was not one fire. It was an execution carried out in stages by empires that feared the power of knowledge more than they valued it. Now think about what was lost. Aristarchus of Samos proposed a heliocentric model of the solar system 17 centuries before Copernicus. His complete works were in that library. Eratosthenes calculated the circumference of the Earth with astonishing accuracy, using nothing but shadows and geometry. His full research was there. Hero of Alexandria built a working steam engine, a primitive device, yes, but a steam engine nonetheless, more than 1,000 years before the Industrial Revolution. His designs were cataloged in those halls. We are not just mourning scrolls. We are mourning centuries of potential human progress that were deliberately set on fire. And this is what makes the destruction of the Library of Alexandria not merely a historical tragedy, but an urgent warning for our own time. Knowledge is never safe. It is never permanent. Every generation faces forces that would rather destroy understanding than allow it to challenge their authority. The scrolls are gone, but the impulse that destroyed them is very much alive. Every banned book, every silenced scientist, every censored archive is an echo of that mob storming the Serapeum. For centuries, the story was simplified. One fire, one accident, one villain. But now you know the truth. The Library of Alexandria was not lost. It was taken from us piece by men who understood its power and chose to extinguish it. So what other secrets has history buried to protect the powerful? Next week on Historical Secrets, we are going deep beneath the Vatican to explore a sealed archive that the Church guarded for over 400 years, and what was finally found inside will leave you speechless. If this story sent a shiver down your spine, hit subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss a revelation. Share this with someone who deserves to know what was stolen from humanity. Until next time, keep questioning everything.